God dwells in you.
And also in you.
Oremos. Dios Todopoderoso y Eterno, que gobiernas todas las cosas en el cielo y en la tierra. Escucha nuestras oraciones por esta familia parroquial. Fortalece a los fieles, aviva a los indiferentes y restaura a los penitentes. Concédenos todo lo necesario para nuestra vida en común. Únenos a todos en corazón y mente dentro de tu Santa Iglesia. Por Jesucristo nuestro Señor. Amen. Almighty and ever-living God, ruler of all things in heaven and earth, hear our prayers for this parish family. Strengthen the faithful, arouse the careless, and restore the penitent. Grant us all things necessary for our common life, and bring us all to be of one heart and mind within your holy church, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Welcome. If you are new at All Saints or visiting with us this morning, would like to be kept up to date of future events here at All Saints Church, there are green contact sheets near both doors. Please just take a moment to sign those and give us your contact information. Also at the welcome table on the lawn, you can pick up a red welcome bag, which includes a welcome card. You can just fill it out right there, or you can send it in later. It's wonderful to have you here. For everyone who's streaming at us, everyone turn and wave at the camera. Hello to everyone streaming at us from around the country and around the world. Wonderful to have you here. As I always say, if you're where you are, I hope you know where your bathrooms are. But if you're here, our bathrooms are just around that corner and to the right, in case you need to use those. At all times, we put our faith into action here at All Saints Church, and every week we pick something to kind of give a laser beam focus to that for that week as a community. This week we are writing to California Attorney General Javier Becerra, expressing our full support for his stance on immigration policies and against actions that could adversely impact residents of our state, such as the proposed inclusion of a citizenship question on the next U.S. Census. So we're writing to the Attorney General and saying thank you and keep up the good work. So you can stop by the action table by the door over there or on the lawn to participate in this week's action. As always, there's lots of things that keep All Saints Church chugging along, and it's a huge amount of the grace of God. It is the labor of a huge number of people, and it is the financial generosity of so many of you and anyone who comes into the orbit of All Saints Church. If you have pledged to All Saints Church this year, thank you so much. If you haven't, there is still time. Just let us know. We'll hook you up with a pledge form. If you're streaming with us online, you can click a button and donate. If you've made a gift, a special gift for Easter, thank you so much for that. And if you haven't and would like to, we can also tell you how to do that. So again, thank you for the many, many ways that everyone supports the life and ministry of All Saints Church. What we're doing this week is we're doing something that we're trying to do quarterly. It's something that I did when I was in St. Louis that became an incredibly useful just way for us to get to know each other and be together as a community, and we call them on-the-table forums. And I'll kind of do the public service announcement that comes before it, and then a lot of this is just, most of this is just opening it up for all of us. What I believe is that Eucharist is not just something that we do for an hour, or I guess in today's case, less than an hour, on a Sunday morning. It is a way that we live. And what happens in the Eucharist is we don't just put bread and wine and some money on the table. That represents something, and what that represents is our whole selves. And what happens in the Eucharist is we lay our lives on the table. And what is on the table is really just a wonderful holy mess. And it's your life and your life and your life and my life and everyone's life, and it's the life of Christ. And God takes that and just messes it all together and brings something amazing out of it that is greater than the sum of the parts, and then we each get a piece of that back and we go out into the world, so that when we go out into the world, we are literally carrying a piece of Christ, but we're also carrying a piece of each other. And that also means that whatever we were carrying in our lives when we came in, be it a joy, be it a burden, we're no longer carrying it alone. And the job of the church, and part of what we get to do, St. Paul called it discerning the body. And what it is it is looking at that sort of mass of us and Jesus on the table and saying, what do we see? And looking at each other deeply and listening to each other deeply and wondering what God is dreaming for us and wondering what God has in mind. And so do these things called on-the-table forums, and they're very sort of specifically designed. It is an opportunity for anyone to take something that is on your heart or on your mind about our common life together as a community and just lay it on the table. That means that we can disagree about things and we're not going to worry about solving that. There may be some things that are said that are in tension with each other, and we're not going to worry about resolving the tension. We're just going to let those things lay on the table together. It really is an exercise of courageous speaking and courageous listening. Now, I will say, if you have a direct question you want to ask me, I'm happy to try to answer it. But this is not an exercise in debate so much as it is an exercise of really kind of listening and expressing where we are as a community and wondering, well, where does Jesus fit in all this? Where does God fit in all this? And what are we hearing and who are we? And so with that, we have a couple people. I know Jason and someone else has a microphone. Oh, right there, I'm sorry. Christine and Jason have microphones. And at this point, I just want to open it up to you all and say, what is it that you'd like to lay on the table? And I think we see, okay, well, I'm going to let you go. Yeah.
I just want
to say your names too.
Deb Ogden, and I would just like to applaud the people or the person, I don't know, who envisioned and implemented the creative space in our sanctuary. I think it really validates our values to include every member of our community in worship.
Okay. I wanted to, I'm Ingrid Kalam, and I wanted to say I really appreciated the woman of color, you know, whatever, that series of people, when you brought people in to preach and have the forum, that was incredibly valuable and kind of life-changing. Not life-changing, but yeah, I guess, you know, thought-changing. And I've pursued a bunch of those people, their writings and stuff. And also, I thought that was brave, not brave, I don't know what it was of you to, you know, let go of control of the pulpit for that long. It was good.
Thank you.
I'm Nancy Mackey, and I promise you this question does not have any single person in mind. But I wonder, who does the funerals around here? Do you take turns?
That's great. Actually, I want to bring, can we get a microphone to Sally Howard? That's a really great kind of technical question and an opportunity for that. So Sally,
Sure.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. You know, pastoral care and healing and health oversee all memorials and all memorial services, but we actually do a rota among the staff priests, both the priests, and for some services, if they don't include a Eucharist, we also have our deacon, our archdeacon, Charlene Crean, who participates in services. And then we have a number of staff that help us put the program together. The liturgy Melissa puts together in consultation with the pastoral care office. Those liturgies, and we have a number of people that help. And also our adjunct, our retired clergy, Maggie Cunningham being one of them right here, sometimes also helps us because we, you know, at any point in time, we can have a large number of memorials to do. And so that is how we do them, with the help of everybody, but through the pastoral care office. I might also take the opportunity to say that we also pre-plan memorials, meaning that, you know, we have a whole packet of information and we sit and go through those choices so that, you know, in the future, when all of us get to that point, there is something that we keep on file for parishioners, and it can be an immense help to families to actually specify, what you want your service to look like. And it's a really rich part, I think, of our spiritual journey, even to do that. So if it's something you're interested in, we do a lot of it, and we'd be happy to walk that journey with you ahead of time.
Since Sally went there, I want to just affirm that, which is one of the best gifts that you can give to your family is to do that memorial service preparation in advance. I know I've done it with my own father, and actually asked Ana Camacho to put the information in my box so I can do that myself, because when a family is in grief, it's a really hard time to be planning the nuts and bolts of a memorial service, and you want to do something that is absolutely faithful to the wishes of the person that you love, and it's so good if you have that information there in front of you. So I really would encourage everyone. I mean, most of us don't want to think about that and have those conversations, and we all think, oh, we've got plenty of time, or most of us do. And I would really encourage you to do that pre-planning and make use of the pastoral care department in doing that. So commercial over.
I'm Jane Brust. This morning's liturgy reminded me of the power of breaking bread in small groups outside the church. Mm-hmm. And a few years ago, I believe as a function of stewardship that year, we organized some small dinner groups. I was in a group with my husband. There were 4 couples in all. We had 2 successful dinners, and then we kind of fell apart. At the end of the season, there was an evaluation. I was really happy the church was asking for some feedback. I gathered the feedback wasn't so great because we didn't do it again. I'm willing to volunteer to help organize this effort again for anyone who's interested. I think it's powerful. I've been a member of All Saints 12 years now. There's still a lot of people I don't know, but I like to cook, and I like to eat and drink and entertain, and a lot of other people do too, and I think it's an important part of our ministry to each other and a way to get to know each other.
Wow, thank you so much, Jane.
I'm going to give you my email, because congregational development's working. Okay. Actually, let me respond to that a little bit to say the Congregational Development Committee, the congregational dinners were logistically challenging for the staff because they were trying to do a church-wide thing. We're right now talking about a way to reinvent that as one-offs, where if you want to do one, there can just be a sign-up for yours, and so we'll get in touch. And we're trying to figure out an easier way to get that going, because a lot of people have asked about it.
Yeah. Hey, Bob.
Thanks, Jason. I wonder if you could tell us where we stand.
Say your name, Bob.
I'm sorry, Bob Carlson.
There you go.
If you could tell us where we stand on what I believe is underway, a search for additional ordained clergy. Are we not doing that? And where do we stand? And it's taken quite a long time.
It has taken quite a long time. That's a direct question, so I'll answer that. We had a search committee that had been working for many months. And then we ran up against our budget process this year. And what emerged in our budget process was, I don't know if you remember, but we had quite a considerable deficit in the budget. And we need to consider not just what is possible for this year, but particularly in hiring, what will be sustainable for several years. And so what we recognized was we did not have the financial capacity this year to bring someone else on. And so right now, we are not actively looking for another priest. So that's where we are right now. We are hopeful that we currently have, well, we're not hopeful that we currently have 3. We currently do have 3 full-time priests on staff, me and Susan and Sally. And we're hopeful of bringing a 4th on in 2019. But we have some work to do with that. So that's where we are right now.
My name is Olga LaMarche. This is not a serious problem, but I know that coming to church together, inside the church, people see others that they haven't seen for a long time, and they like to visit, and they sit and visit and talk until the organ plays the little interlude in the very beginning. But others of us like to have quiet right before we enter the church. And when we sit down, we do want some quiet to meditate and pray and not have a talking couple right behind us. And that is just something I want to say and throw out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the comment you just made. And it just brought, it's just kind of a joke.
Clara, could you say your
Oh,
name?
I'm sorry. I'll just jump right
It's
in.
okay.
Uh-oh. I'm Clara Hill-Williams, and I've been a member here since 2016. I came about a month after Mike came. Didn't know it. But anyway, my husband is Steve Williams. So I just wanted to say, I used to attend a large church, African-American church in Los Angeles, and I became really good friends with the pastor's wife. And so, not his wife, but is also his mother-in-law. And so one day, they passed out these earphones for those that were hard of hearing. And so I said, oh, do you want the earphones? She said, no, honey, I don't need to hear him say anything. But my point is that it kind of dovetails into what the cook lady said that likes to cook. I would love to be in a small group with you. But church is a place to fellowship and congregate. It's also a place for solemn assembly. And we have to learn how to get along. So if you're around some talky people, and sometimes I'm sitting next to my husband, and he's like, and he's shh, but that's the joy, and people share joy in different ways. So I think you can't shut people down because they may have a real burden to talk. At the same time, I understand that just collecting yourself in the solemn assembly or just that sacredness that's also important. And these are some of the things as a church of all saints we have to, maybe there's a special time period at the beginning of the service where it's quiet, or sometimes little signs can help, but it's a valid point. But I just for us to always be mindful that we all have different needs when we come to church.
Yeah, thank you, Clara.
Since I haven't seen hands, I have one. My name's Jason Lyon. Half of you won't have even heard about this, and the other half might not have even noticed. But a couple of months ago, we undertook a mini construction project or deconstruction project in the men's restrooms to take out all the urinals. I heard it. So for me, I think it was meant to be an inclusive gesture, although I'm not sure who was included by it or who was asking for it. Mm-hmm. But I was troubled in a time when we have many deferred maintenance needs and many things that don't work, that we invested money in destroying a working resource seemed to me not great stewardship. And so I wanted to hear about the kind of decision-making process, whether that was a conversation that arose out of the community or out of a small conversation, and how we got to the place of destroying a working thing without a plan for something in place of it that is working.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually happy to talk about this because it's a great example of the imperfection of our life together. This came out of, there's something called operations staff. Which is it's a fairly large group of staff who have primary responsibility over the day-to-day operations of All Saints Church and of kind of incarnating the mission and ministry of it from a staff perspective. And a conversation that had come up over time was, and as it's happened around the country, is how friendly is this congregation to people who are transgender? And do we have, what is the role of specifically gender-identified bathrooms in that? And we do have sort of single-unit restrooms on campus that are all-gender restrooms and that are labeled as such. And so we had a conversation about this, and I was the leader. I was leading the conversation. I was leading the meeting, and I think it happened over a couple meetings. And there seemed to be, to me, a consensus about, well, let's just go ahead and make these single-gender restrooms. And I won't sort of go into all the issues beyond that. And it's amazing how quickly our building and ground staff will actually do something when we'll tell you to do it. And so we made a decision, and almost immediately the urinals came out because they're really good at doing their job. And then other issues started to bubble up about this. And there are things that I wish that I'd thought of ahead of time, but I didn't. And part of it is, wow, we were making decisions about people without including those people in the decision-making process. We were not asking the question about how are we going to educate about this. We started to realize that for a lot of people, this was going to be a bigger deal than I had thought it would be. And so instead of saying, well, we're just going to push full steam ahead, we said, well, this is a little awkward, but we're going to stop. And we're going to make a decision, but we're going to do it right. And so with the help of Kelly Phelan, I've reached out to someone who has done consulting on transgender issues around the Diocese of Los Angeles and in other places. And we're going to be listening to sort of other thoughts and thoughts from the community about how we feel about this whole issue of all-gender restrooms. Do I wish that it had been done differently? Could it have been done better? Absolutely. And we're sort of in this funky purgatorial place with our men's room right now. But it just is kind of the way things happen. And I guess as much as I wish we could sort of go back in time and do it differently, mostly I really want us to be the kind of community where, first of all, it's okay to screw up. And there's a piece of this that, yeah, we kind of screwed it up. And that when we realize that we can stop and say, well, what do we do? How do we not double down on the screw up? But instead say, okay, let's talk about this. So if you have been inconvenienced by the lack of a urinal in a men's room, I apologize for that. And so that certainly was not the intent. We're trying to sort through this as expeditiously as possible. And yeah, your point about removing a working resource when we have other, of the many ways that this was a mess up, that wasn't one I considered, but let's add it to the list. So, okay.
Pat Hoffman. I wanted to comment about one of the forums when our young people were talking just before they went to DC. It was incredibly moving, and I'm not tied in with the youth program. I'm way too old.
No, you're not. And if you'd like to be, there's work.
I'm too old to have any ready access to what continues on, except for what is open to the whole community, which I've appreciated. But I did want to just comment that my understanding of something of what young people are going through right now was changed by that forum. And to hear the heartfelt expressions of our young people about what they're going through, things that I went through, we all go through things as teenagers, but what I went through was nothing compared to what they're experiencing. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciated that, and to say that I think that as a whole congregation, I will value ways that you keep providing us to stay with them. It's in my heart that even if I can't personally do it, to have ways to stay with them, to support them, and to bring the resources of our faith to help them.
Thank you, Pat.
To briefly revisit that urinal issue.
Name, please.
What's that?
Name, please.
Oh, David Randall.
Thanks, David.
Sorry. It looked like there perhaps isn't room to put a toilet in the place where the urinal was. If so, you wouldn't be gaining anything even by substituting. It might be possible to do something like moving the partitions over to make more room so that could happen. If that isn't the case, then to make it unisex, you could put a door on that labeled urinal if you want, and put a waterless one in so that it's ecologically more sound than the previous one and takes less plumbing. And that could give a higher volume throughput on that bathroom, even if it's unisex, so that there are some ones that would only be used by men, but there's still more volume that can get through it when you have a meeting and it's crowded. So that might work.
Right. Thank you.
I had a thought about the people wanting to speak and to be conversational and those who want to have it quiet. Have you ever ridden on a train that has a quiet car? Mm-hmm. I wonder if we could have, say, the back of the service, back half of the room is for people who would like to converse, and the front for those who would like to have silence. Just popped into my head the quiet cars.
Okay.
Hi, Laura Garrett, been
Hey,
here
Laura.
since '93. God, I'm old. First, I want to give a shout out to Sally. Back to the question about funerals. Somebody asked about funerals. Yeah. Sally was wonderful when I needed her help, and she was moving offices at the time, and it was completely chaotic, but I never felt chaos. So I just want to give a shout out to that. And gosh, we need more priests, because the three of you, I mean, I've been here through many priests and cycles of numbers of priests, and 3 is insufficient, so we need to solve the problem. But what I really wanted to say, what's really on my heart, is something that was triggered by a post you made on Facebook about inclusive language.
Yes.
And this has been burning in my heart because many years ago there was a UCLA scholar here named Scott Barchi who did a wonderful talk in Sweetland Hall that completely revolutionized how I thought about the Bible, particularly the words of Jesus and Paul. What he said was that in the Bible we are reading a mistranslation. Jesus and Paul always said brothers and sisters, sisters and brothers. They never said brethren. They never said brothers. It was always both sisters and brothers. And I understand that that might feel exclusive to some people, but I don't want us to lose the historical context of what Jesus and Paul were doing, which was, and this is what Scott Barchi said, that back in those days, the most intimate, equal relationship between men and women was between brothers and sisters. And so for them to do that, for Jesus to do that, and I think this is kind of why he maybe got killed, is that he was breaking down the old patriarchal, hierarchical structure where the father was the king of each family, the ruler, and I think this goes with all the language about family too. He's not saying hate your mother, hate your brother. He's saying that those power structures are not meaningful in the kingdom of God, that it really is about brothers and sisters. So I just worry if we stop saying brothers and sisters, if we say friends, which is great because we should be friends, but I just worry that we might lose the power of that because that was so powerful that it got him killed. So that's just what I'm laying on the table today.
No, thank you.
Hi, Ingrid Kalam again. Ingrid Kalam. So I just wanted to also say I appreciate the transformation in the, I forgot which part it is, where the kids can be on the rug, because that's another big change, like the urinals and, that's structurally inclusive.
Hopefully a little better than that one.
Yeah, I think it is. But when my daughter was little, we would walk around and look at the spider webs in the corners, and there was no way to be in the, it was a little, I felt radical for, walking around while it, and so I appreciate that you're including the little people's needs not to be sitting in a pew. Thanks.
Thank you. Over here.
Morning, Mike.
Morning.
As you know me, I'm Bob.
That's Bob, yeah.
I listened to you speak this morning about Jesus said he's hungry, he had food for me. And you know me, I'm one of the homeless that sometimes I have no food, I'm hungry. But few of the people here help me a lot. You and Sally and Tula, daughter, and mentioned few of the people that are here. And you know, I have to live close by the church. Every morning I walk around the church, I can see about 5, 6 homeless people sleep around our church. And I know that you feed the homeless people every Monday morning, and I thank you. But can you do more? Because once in a while, the whole day the church is closed, and they have nowhere to go to eat.
Thank you. Thank you for raising that, Bob.
I hesitate to bring...
Name,
oh,
please.
my name's Jackie Knowles.
Hey, Jackie.
I hesitate to bring up something, I mean, everyone has been so complimentary, and
Yeah.
certainly this is a wonderful place,
Yeah.
and I love coming here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to bring up something that I feel a little guilty about, actually,
Okay.
because I think I know what the purpose is, but I'm having trouble with it. And that is that when you speak in Spanish, what's the message I am to get? I think it is that I should open my mind to the situation of the immigrants and the less privileged. But am I supposed to go out and learn Spanish? I'm not sure what the mission is there, and I need some help with that.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And that's not negative. That's a wonderful question. The truth is, it's not about you.
Why not? I want to know why not. I'm here.
Right.
I want to be addressed. I want to be important here.
Right, and I mean, in some ways,
part of it.
I'm not going to say it's not about you, but I use Spanish in the service because more and more we have people in our community, both inside the All Saints community and particularly in our neighborhood outside the All Saints community, for whom Spanish is their primary and in some cases their only language. And when they come into All Saints Church, I want them to be able to hear the gospel and the love and life of this community I love the way Diane Bruce, our bishop, talks about it, in the language of your heart. And perhaps in the only language that they can understand. And so what's at the front of my mind, say when I open up this session with a prayer both in Spanish and in English, is that I want people for whom Spanish is their heart language or perhaps their only language to have an experience of All Saints and say, oh, that's a place that can be for me. Now, for the rest of us, I mean, first of all, I'm trying to learn Spanish. And it's a phenomenal experience, and I struggle with languages. The other thing I would just invite all of us into, and the other thing is we need to, if we look at the demographics, we need to explore more and more use of Mandarin and Chinese, because that is a hugely growing population in our neighborhood. But I had what for me was a transformational experience, a transformational journey, when I was walking the Camino in Spain right before I came here. And at every stop along the way, you would go to church services. And they were all in Spanish, because we're in Spain. And I spoke maybe 3 words of Spanish. And it was, in some ways, a frustrating experience. And I thought, you know what, this must be what it is like for someone who speaks only Spanish to walk into a service that is all English. And it was an incredibly important experience for me. And then it also encouraged me to enter into the liturgy in a different way, actually kind of, I think, using a different part of my brain. We use more and more Spanish. We now have the Lord's Prayer in 3 languages, and we've had our Lenten and Advent pew cards in 3 languages. The primary purpose is because these are the heart languages and the functional languages of an increasing number of people in Pasadena and the San Gabriel Valley. We want everyone to know that All Saints is a place that can be for you. And also, I think it is my experience as someone who pretty much when you look at power and privilege, it works for me in just about every area of my life. it's useful for me to have regular experiences where something isn't about me and where I'm not being centered. And I find that God speaks to me in that area. And in terms of, should you learn Spanish, I would recommend everyone learn in Spanish. And I'm trying, and, Spanish and Mandarin, it's like, okay, because we're going to be, the demographics aren't going backwards. And I find that, one of the things I would have y'all do, and I'm talking way too much, is go to the 1 o'clock service. Please, please, please go to the 1 o'clock service. And don't even just wait for the first Sunday, which is the bilingual Sunday. It is an amazing community. It is phenomenal. It is also one of the best ways I've found to learn Spanish, is to go to that service and just listen to it. And if it's a non-bilingual Sunday, the preachers will provide a copy of the sermon in English, so you can follow along in English. And it is a piece of our community that is just amazingly vibrant and gifted. And I just encourage everyone to go to that. And it's also just an amazingly hospitable community. That's probably way more than you wanted, Jackie.
Well, actually, that's what I sort of thought.
Okay.
And so I guess what I would suggest is that maybe there's another way to encourage that, because we do have a Spanish-speaking church, and to encourage all of us to go to that,
Mm-hmm.
and encourage us to speak Spanish. I think it would be a good thing.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie.
Martin Miller Hessel.
Hey, Martin.
And we've been here 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I don't hear very much at All Saints is that there are some other dynamic and vital or struggling congregations in Pasadena that share many of the values we share here so beautifully. And I'm wondering in what way this congregation is part of the wider ecumenical and interfaith responses to the issues we care about so much.
Mm-hmm. So is that a question you're asking me?
Yeah, I'm wondering how could we be, you don't even have to answer it now, but how could we not think that all religion in Pasadena happens to be at All Saints?
Yeah, and
we are part of a huge body.
We are, and I'll answer really briefly that there are organizations that are, associations. There's one called Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice that we have members of our, not just clergy and staff, but other members of the congregation associated with. We have various other relationships both in Pasadena and throughout the LA area. And frankly, one of the great things that I inherited as rector was relationships with places like Leo Beck Temple, that George Regas and Ed Bacon, for 40 going on 50 years have nurtured those relationships. I'm going to an event for the Hassan Hathout Foundation this afternoon and speaking at that. So the short answer is there are ways that we're involved, and there's always more ways that we can be involved. And it tends to be a lot more sort of clergy relationships and not as much sort of in the pew congregational relationships. And so that's a good word from you. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, Sally, go ahead.
Can I just add something to that? We are, planning to continue also the Conspire event with Richard Rohr, and, which is broadly ecumenical and I would say broadly interfaith. And you'll be hearing more about that, and that would include, the whole congregation, an opportunity.
Hi there, my name's Scott Martin Rowe, and just 2 quick points. One on yours, we attended Emmanuel Presbyterian Church for a while, and they had the Spanish service would begin, and right after the sermon, the English-speaking congregation arrived, and then the next half hour was bilingual, and then the Spanish-speaking congregation left at some point, and then we finished the service in English. And I teach high school in downtown LA. Most of my kids speak Spanish, but I read Spanish better than most of them, I think because of that half hour a week I got, where I'd have to read everything off of the slides. But my other point is maybe a small one, but the part of every service where I get thrown out, and I keep meaning to write an email, but I'll just say it now, is there's a moment where we go from sitting, and then we're supposed to go into prayer kneeling. And so many times the prayer begins and everybody's still pulling down their little kneel boards, especially if you have people in the pew who are new to the church. And I grew up Lutheran, which is an exercise of standing up and sitting down the whole time. So pulling that thing out to kneel is always a surprise. So it'd be great if we could just have a pause to get that thing down and get on our knees, because I usually miss the first sentence or two of the prayer that we're all saying together. And that's it.
Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Lyons, and I wanted to say that I struggled with the Spanish that you used during the service at first also, and I had an experience that changed that, which is a couple of rows ahead of me, there were two women who were talking to each other before the service in English, and when you started speaking Spanish, I'm sorry to say they both giggled at your Spanish, but they had...
Okay. My Spanish ain't great.
But I also saw a look of joy on their faces, that their language was acknowledged. Mm-hmm. And that sort of changed my heart about mm-hmm. the use of the language, different languages in the service.
Thank you. And Antonio Gallardo has been wonderful and wonderfully patient with me. He works on me with my pronunciation, so does Ada Ramirez. And so I'm working on it to make it less giggly. Yeah.
My name is Beverly Swab.
Hey, Beverly.
And one of the things I've always enjoyed about All Saints is our worldwide music. But as you came and started speaking in Spanish and then in English, one of the things I wondered about is if we, in the first two services, are getting Spanish and English. In the 1 o'clock service, are they getting English and Spanish? You're the rector of all of us, so eventually you're going to have to learn some Mandarin if we get some Mandarin people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, so that's perfectly fine, but particularly in the services where we do a lot of Spanish songs and other things, and I keep thinking, are we the only ones being bilingual, or are they getting Spanish-English the way we get English-Spanish?
That was a question, so I'll answer that. First of all, I would say come to the 1 o'clock service and find out. And 1 o'clock, there is way more English being spoken at the 1 o'clock service than there is Spanish being spoken at the 7:39 or 11:15. Time for one more. Hey, Eric.
My name's Eric Taylor. I come to the 9 o'clock service because of having a loss of hearing, sitting up in the front. And this morning, many times when the children are up there, you can't see who's celebrating the Eucharist. Mm-hmm. This morning, you moved someone over to the side, which I appreciated, yep. Because I read lips a lot, and I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Time for one more. Go, Barbara.
Good morning.
Hey.
I was at the 9:30
Barbara,
service.
could you say your
yes.
name?
Barbara Byrne.
Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment because I thought there were things in your sermon that were extremely relevant. I have friends that are in the choir, and they're quite upset that they will no longer get breakfast between services. Mm-hmm. But what one of them mentioned was, it's not just the eating, it's the community. Yep. It's how we get to really know each other and support each other. Mm-hmm. That's my comment. I think they should still get breakfast.
Well, and as a point of information and clarification about this is, choir there has been a breakfast for choir for many, many years here. It's been a budget line item. It was about $18,000 a year. Because of the same budget issues that we talked about before, the decision that was made was not to include that in the budget for this year. But leaving open the option that if the choir wanted, we weren't banning breakfast, if the choir wanted to self-fund it, if the choir wanted to bring their own food or do something, in terms of the space, we absolutely see the value of it. It was just one of those decisions. It was a scarce resource decision that had to be made. And a decision had to be made. That is how the vestry chose to make that decision. So Just to be clear, it wasn't a banning of breakfast, but it was a removal of that budget line item. So, but I understand that.
Yeah.
Right. And the choir right now is having those conversations about how they want, if and how they want to continue that. So those conversations are happening. Thank you.
Yeah, well, there's a group here that takes lunch every week to Friends Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
We could have a group that brings breakfast to the choir. We all benefit by their music, and they donate a lot of time to prepare for those. That would seem like a congregational responsibility to do a rota.
Mm-hmm. There's lots of different options. It is at 11 o'clock. Okay, Jim, I'll let you, one more.
I just wanted to make the point because somebody mentioned that they wanted to send an email, and I just wanted to appreciate this because this is so much more powerful than an email. Mm-hmm. And I think if people have concerns or something on their heart, it's always better to have a conversation than to send an email. So, thank you.
Amen. And I guess what I'd like to sum up before we go, and thank you all for coming, and please encourage other people to come when we do this the next time, is like one of the issues that came up was the issue of when I come into church, some people want to sit quietly and some people want to talk. I have never been in a church where this is not an issue. It is an issue everywhere. And we can come up with lots of different ideas about it, but really what I've found the best thing is, and kind of Clara, you kind of got to this, is be aware of each other. This is the whole purpose of this, is so that we can be more aware of what's on each other's hearts and what's on each other's lives. And so, just be aware of each other. Ask, hey, is this bothering you? Or if someone is sitting quietly, respect that, thinking, maybe they want to just pray. Maybe I can take my conversation somewhere else. There's not a good or a bad or a right or a wrong answer to this, but every one of these things is a way for us to grow in relationship and understanding of each other. So always let's be looking for ways to notice each other, to listen to each other, to grow in compassionate understanding of each other. And with that, I will say thank you so much for being here, and go in peace.